Hey guys, what's up? Boone down south here. I got something totally different, totally cool for you today. So I'm working on this cabin. It's a vacation rental in Pigeon Forge area in Smoky Mountains. So y'all can check that out on our website, peacefulcabinrentals.com. Well, we do a lot of the design work and creativity part and so forth. And so anyway, so we're working on this game theater room that you've seen. Really cool cabin this is going to be. We've got this big wall back here. And we're like, what do we do with this big wall? We need a statement piece. We need something. What are we going to do? Couldn't figure it out. Basically, my daughter, who does a lot of crafting, and if you're a crafter watching this, she does all kind of stuff, and her YouTube channel is Crafters Autonomous. And she told us about, she said, hey, I remember something I saw a couple years ago, and she found it for us. And basically, it was a link that this lady put together, and I'll put a link for it down in the description. But basically, the link is a super wall-sized magnetic Scrabble board. It's going to be like the whole wall here. So that's what we're going to work on. I know it's something different than I normally do, but I got to get this done. I thought I'd film how we're doing this. We're not going to do it exactly like she did it in her blog, but I'll put the links below, kind of tell you what we did. It's maybe a multi-part video, I don't know, but stay tuned, hit that like and subscribe. Booyah, baby, this is done. All right, so I was reading, as I was looking at this project, I was reading some stuff and I came across this post, and I don't know who said it, but they said, I do good projects and I do great projects. And this person will say that a good project is something that he builds in his workshop, that he does, and it benefits himself, his wife, or maybe mutually both of them at the same time. They get some pleasure, they get some use out of whatever it was he built. But a great project is one in which you need a new tool. Boom. So, I was able to pick up this extra large Craig straight edge guide, which I'm going to need that. And I already have a router at home and a router table, but I wanted a compact plunge router that I can use because on this board, I'm going to route out all the squares, if you will, just to route out an indentation on the board. And so I need something to go straight with, so I've got that. But then, did a little research and I decided on the DeWalt compact router. It's got the fixed base kit and the plunge kit. So in her blog post, she uses an X-card machine to carve out all the letters. I'm not buying an X-card machine. I bought this DeWalt plunge router, and I bought it specifically because it's small, it's compact. I needed a more compact trim router anyway, so that works out really good. But the plunge router aspects lets me use a interlock template kit from Rockler, and with that, this accepts the bushings, the guide bushings for that, and so with that, I can carve out all the letters on 3.5-inch square tiles. So that's what we're going to do. But the first thing we're going to have to do is put the board together first. It's bigger than just a 4x8 sheet of plywood. So I've got a 3/4 inch, what do they call it? White wood, I think, or yellow wood, where it's basically veneer on one side and it's primed on the other side. It was pretty expensive, especially now wood prices up. I got a 4x8 sheet of that, and I was able to find a 1x12 3/4 inch premium pine. And basically, I've got to butt the two of those together. So I've got a bigger board than 4x8. It's going to be 5x8, if you will. So that's going to be our starting board. So I'm going to basically join those together with the Craig set up with pocket holes. So that's what we're going to do first. And then we're going to go through a whole bunch of steps. So we're going to show you everything we're doing. So stay tuned. All right. So basically on my 3/4 inch 1x12 board, it's going to mount to the plywood. It's going to be a flush mount. Again, I'm going to use pocket hole jig here for it. But I'm going to mark off at 6 inches from the ends. And I'll mark every foot along the way so I know where to put my holes for this. So that's basically what I'm going to do here. All right, so I got the pocket holes done. This part of the board was kind of bowing off a little bit and not giving me a good edge on the front seam. So I went ahead and did one more on each edge, one more pocket hole on each edge close to the end piece here to help pull that back in. So after we got the board sanded down to have a smooth finish there were a couple gaps still on the board just because I didn't have my table saw up here where I'm working to true up this board. So there's a couple gaps here, and we just put some of this Miracle Wood filler in there. That dries pretty fast. And so tomorrow the plan is to sand this one more time. All these gaps should be filled in. Take this to a higher grade of sandpaper real quick on this board. That one's already primed, ready to go. And then hopefully we're going to locate some of that magnetic primer to roll out on this thing. So that's the plan. All right, so for the Scrabble board, this is the wall layout. The board it's using for the wall. We got that 1x12 added on there. Cleaned up the edges, let the putty dry, sanded that down. We got a smooth edge. We've kind of factored in the whole width of the board. I'm not exactly following what Jen did in her blog article, which again is linked down below. But I've checked the spacing of what the board needs to be, spacing for trim, the spacing for the letter distribution, spacing of what I want. I'm going to do a whiteboard, not a chalkboard like she did. On the far side, we're going to make it a little wider on that end. So what we're fixing to do now is go ahead and cut this to the width we need this board to be for the board here. And then I think we're going to be about ready to start the magnetic primer putting on here. All right, sorry for the construction noise in the background there, but what we did is we've got our board cut to width and length, or width and height, if you will. And even though it's going to get painted on, I wanted to mark all my lines out so I knew exactly what I had. Again, there's going to be 1x2 here, which is really only 1.5 inches wide. So that's coming down here and here. We've got 9 inches wide of blank space. That's kind of what we're figuring. Okay, I'm not exactly with what maybe she's got on her blog, but I got 9 inches of blank space here because we have the letter distribution here, and then the word Scrabble up there, and then this is the playing board. But again, I've got 1.5 inches of trim, and in my build I have 1 7/8 blank space below the board. Okay, and so I've kind of marked what I've got. As I move to the end here, again, this blank space here to even it between the top and the bottom, I kept the same space here so that would look continuous all the way around the 3 sides. So that's 1 7/8 going up. This is blank space. This is 1x2 trim. And then this part is, I think we set this to 16 inches wide. And we're gonna not do the chalkboard. We're gonna do the whiteboard paint on this side. And then again, we got trim. Okay. So we've kind of marked it all out to make sure our dimensions work. Feel good about it. And it also kind of tells us that I only need to take the magnetic paint on this side of the board up to this trim marker, and that's I don't need to worry about the paint over here, so for the magnetic primer. So that's the plan. One little catch I did is when I cut this board off to cut it to length to meet all the dimensions we had, because of where my pocket hole screws were, I had to put one at the end. And what I've noticed is now that I've cut, my pocket hole closer to the end is up here, and so I've got some gap and a little bit of play, and not lining up so well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stand this board back up and just kind of pull these together, get them flush, and run another pocket screw from the back into that to kind of tighten this up. And hopefully, it was tight before. I didn't need any putty in here. It was so tight. So I'm hoping that once I put the pocket screw, that'll resolve that issue. And again, this chipped out stuff from the saw, that's all going to be covered with trim anyway, so it doesn't matter, because we're going to put a 1x2 here, then we're going to attach a 1x3 on the outside of it like this. All that'll be covered up. So what we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and put the Rust-Oleum magnetic primer on the game board area. Now, in Jen's blog post concerning this, she did 3 coats of this. The first magnet she used didn't work so hot. She used 4 of them. Then she switched out to a different type of magnet, which worked. Now, I'm going to tell you, when I read through the reviews all over the place on Amazon, Home Depot, wherever, you name it, there's not good reviews on this product, okay? There's a lot of scary reviews, and 1 stars and 2 stars and 3 stars, a lot of those, and then you'll get some 5 stars. And after kind of reading through and filtering things out, I really think it comes down to the application, proper application, and proper magnets. I've had some guys talk about, hey, you can't use these little magnets, you need to use a certain type of rare earth magnets that are very strong, and that's really what you use. And also, the big thing is preparation of this thing. This thing has to be shaken up very thoroughly and then stirred very thoroughly. Apparently, I'm going to find out, but there's metallic material in here, obviously, to get the magnets to stick to it, and it's kind of clumpy from what I understand, and it's down here at the bottom, and you got to work it and work it and work it and work it, and you got to even keep stirring this while you're putting your paint on there and keep this going the whole time to thoroughly mix this product. And I'm hoping that all these bad reviews are from people who did a rush job, maybe bought this off the shelf, didn't have it shaken at the paint store, didn't stir it enough, didn't use the right magnets. That's what I'm hoping for. There are some 5-star reviews on it, but there's a lot of bad reviews, so when you first read about this, it's kind of scary. So we're going to find out if this works or not. I'm going to try to do everything right. I'm going to head down to the paint store right now, get both cans shaken up so we can get our 3 coats on here and see what happens. All right, so I just got back from the paint store, and they shook this up for me. Like I said, I'm kind of nervous about how well it's going to work from everything I've read, but he put it on a 4-minute shake for each one of these cans, which he said was normal than what they normally do on the other paints. So it's thoroughly shaken, and a lot of reviews I've read how it's clumpy at the bottom, and you really got to work the stuff off the bottom still. I'm not feeling clumps at all on the bottom, so I'm thinking this is pretty good and shaken up. So I'm just wanting to make sure, because I think that's one of the keys, is make sure all the metallic stuff is really stirred into this stuff. So that's what we're doing, and we're going to start putting some coats on. All right, working on the second coat now. And pretty much when my wife is doing the rolling, I am stirring this paint because everything I've read, you gotta keep it really stirred. So we're stirring. Other than the 15 seconds here while I'm filming this, I'm stirring. Yes, my hand's cramped. Here's the board. We used 2 quarts. We used every bit of 2 quarts. It was actually, we tried to do light coats. My understanding is if you use heavier coats, from what I've talked to people, that if you put a heavy coat on, those metal flakes kind of tend to, and by the way, we painted this flat, not standing up. So painting it flat, those metal coats would kind of sink down and have more paint on top of them, if you will. So the metallic flakes would be further away from the surface. So we painted it flat. We did thin coats. So we did 4 coats to cover this surface. We just put our final coat on a little bit ago and it's dry to the touch. Brought it inside because we got to take off and gonna let this dry really well. But I need to bring it inside for that. Couple days, we're just going to start routing the grid lines on here. But I got a magnet, this little square refrigerator magnet. Just happened to, I don't know where it came from. And let's see here. Now watch this. Whoa, look at that, baby. Huh? It works. All right, so the paint's dried over the weekend. Again, we did 4 coats out of 2 quarts on this thing. Kind of remarked my outside edges. And with this DeWalt router that I got, we figured it's 2 3/16. I'm using a V blade right now, just a V cutting blade, and I'm only going down just probably less than a 1/16 of an inch. And it's 2 3/16 from the point of that blade to the edge of this guide. So I got my outside edge marked. I went ahead and routed the grooves on my 2 outside vertical lines. And I've kind of learned that through this, I need to take 2 passes, not just the same depth, but the first pass kind of gets it, but there's a lot of the grit in there, and that second pass just cleans it up really good. And so just kind of eyeballing the start and stops, I've got them marked. Just one of these things you got to take time with. So we're going to continue on routing these grooves out and make the board, the 15 by 15 board. So what we did is we made a little jig to know how far I got to measure to mount the Craig glide or edge guide. And that way from each one of our cuts, we can just mark the 2 sides, line the edge guide up, which has been working great, by the way. Okay. That's all I gotta say, because I'm done routing this whole thing. So it's not 100% perfect, but it's pretty darn good. It took a while to do it, I will tell you that. You know, when I looked at Jen Woodhouse's blog, you know, she said she would have rather, because I think she put the top coats on, then she routed it, scuffed up the top coat. So what I thought I would do is just put the magnetic primer down and then edge on that, and then we'll put the top coat down. Ultimately, I think we're going to put these marks in and we're going to paint them black anyway. That's what I'm thinking. We might change our mind. You know, with this magnetic primer, it's not a super smooth surface. So it wasn't as smooth to take the router across as it would be. I think next time I would probably route this without anything on it. Route these grooves out, but maybe not, because this is kind of really thick, this magnetic primer, and it might just fill as goops in. I just don't know. But anyway, we've got it all routed out now. We've got the grid laid out. Down there, like I told you, we're doing whiteboard, so I'm going to show you a little bit more how we're going to handle that aspect of it. But the next step we're going to do is, it's kind of rainy, wet out today. We're going to take it down to the room where it's going to go. We're going to get it set up and get some tarps down, and we're going to start putting the top coat latex paint on top of this. All right, we got the board down here. It's going on that wall right there. In this game room, we got a lot of stuff. Whiskey Barrel 3001, arcade game, theater setup, Xbox Series X 4K setup here on the screen. Another 61 arcade game over here. This is gonna just round this room out. It's gonna be pretty awesome. So, according to Jen Woodhouse's blog, she listed the Benjamin Moore paint colors. So we went to Home Depot and they could match the Benjamin Moore paint colors. And what we've got here is just a quart of the Bear Ultra, which was supposed to be really good for scuff defense. And so we're gonna be putting magnets on here, and I figure, yeah, they can get scuffy, so it's probably a good bet. And then these are all sample sizes, because you don't have to go to a quart. They're only like $5 to get this much paint. And I think these are just for the little individual squares, you know, the triple letter, triple word, all that jazz. And they're just sample sizes, so we think we're good with that. And these were the Bear Marquee, which is also a scuff-proof type paint. We're gonna go ahead and get the base coat of this on. All right, we got the first coat on. Now, the magnetic primer says don't use more than 2 coats to make sure the magnets can stick to it, right? But there's just no way without black underneath. I mean, you can see kind of how we've got some darker areas here, and the more you paint, it just starts picking up paint again. So we're gonna have to do another light coat, but I did some tests with the magnets last night and like put some papers behind them and about a thickness like that, and the magnet still held. So I can't imagine, even once I've got 2 coats of this, and with 2 coats of this, probably we're only gonna need 1 coat of, you know, the double letter word, all that kind of stuff, those paints for those certain squares. So I still think we're gonna be okay. All right, once again at the board here. So Before I outline some of these squares here, I marked all these squares in blue with this little blue tape on it. Those are all the different colored squares, okay? And the reason for that is we had one coat of paint on here, and some of the spots it really needed two for this base, but they really recommend that you only do 2 coats of paint on top of the magnetic primer, or it might be too thick for the magnet to work real well. So try to be careful. So basically we only wanted to put a second coat of this on the non-colored squares, if you will. And then now I'm starting to mask off, like these are the darker red squares here. I'm gonna use that color right there, which is the same one from Jen's blog that she posted. And I just went ahead and started marking some other ones for some other colors to get going, but this is pretty tedious and time consuming. We're gonna start getting this color painted on these squares, and hopefully, since I've got the primer and this base coat, hopefully it'll only take 1 coat of this. That's what I'm hoping. That way there'll only be 2 coats of paint on this particular square. So that's kind of the idea, so we'll see how it works. And by the way, here's a sample letter that we put together. I just grabbed the L, we did the acrylic paint, we gave a sander, beveled the edges on a little bit, glued in one of these magnets. It's not covered in any kind of lacquer. I'm gonna do a spray coat of lacquer on this before we're done, but it's got some pull to it. I know it's on a horizontal surface right now, but it feels like it's strong enough that it's not gonna slide. And these spaces have 2 coats of paint on them right now, and I feel like the magnet is definitely pulling in there. Once the templates were printed out on the Cricut machine, my wife and daughter had to do what's called weeding to pull out the blank spaces for the templates. These are the stencils that a friend cut out for us on the Cricut machine I told you about. We got several of them, one for each one basically. Here's how it came. Transfer paper to cut it over, I guess. There's a good one, okay? And there's a bad one. So that was the first one we did. So we were using the dabber method like we used on the, or actually, I say we, it wasn't me. I'm out of this. My wife and daughter doing this. But we used that dabber for the numbers on the letter tiles, right? And it worked great. It was flat, smooth surface. But this, as you can see, is textured. And these stencils that we have here are not sticking to the texture. And what's happening is we're dabbing, the stencil keeps coming up and it's pushing the paint out. So I'm probably gonna hit this with a sander, come back, paint this orange, and come back and do it like this. Now I'm gonna show you how we're still using the stencil, but I'm gonna show you what's going on now. Okay, so basically we got rid of the transfer paper. That's not what we're doing anymore. My wife's just gonna eyeball that, where that's gonna go, center it on that square, lay that down, and the magic is gonna happen with the Sharpie. And basically you can see there's no centers of the R's and the O's and the P's, right? But since my wife learned her letters many years ago, she knows to stay on the outside of the edges of those P's and the O's and the R's. And that's basically how she did this one up here, and that one came out pretty good. Away she goes. And this way she can kind of control what she's doing and making sure that the paint's not bleeding underneath the edge of the stencil. So that's basically what's going on here. And that's the finished tile there with the letters on. So that looks a whole lot better. Okay, again, up on the scoreboard area, we want to go with a whiteboard or a dry erase board instead of a chalkboard. So you can buy paint that does this, but I thought it'd be a whole lot easier if I just go to Staples, buy me a dry erase board. This is a 23 by 35 to give me the length I want. I'm gonna use the entire length of it. I'm gonna cut that to fit to the width that I want and glue that to the board. And once that's glued down, then it'll go just underneath the trim or right the edges of the trim, so it'll lay over it. I'm gonna put that in there, but that's what we're gonna do. All right, so this is the dry erase board right here. I just used a circular saw to cut off all the metal edges. I was hoping it wasn't glued. I was hoping I could just pull them apart, but that metal seemed to be glued going all up and down. I figured I'd rip the board apart. So I just cut through the metal and everything with my circular saw. The key thing about cutting the dry erase board is cut it with the dry erase board down, okay? It'll keep the chipping from coming out. So it chipped a little bit here, but other than that, it made a pretty good cut, whereas the backside was all chipped to pieces. So definitely put this part down when you're cutting. This is gonna be covered up by trim anyway. So all we gotta do now is I'm gonna take this back down to our big board. I'm gonna measure the actual width we're gonna use, make one final cut on this, and then we're gonna use, I think I'm using E6000 or Gorilla Glue. I forget what I got to glue this in place. But I think Gorilla Glue is what I'm gonna use to glue this in place and let that dry. All right, I used Gorilla Glue construction adhesive to put a bunch of glue on here. We're gonna go ahead and set our board in place and go from there. So we're not quite done with everything, but you can kind of see how this is looking right now. It's looking really good. Still got to put a star in the middle and a few more of the double word scores over there. A lot of effort here, but it's looking pretty good. So what I want to do, it's going to be raining the next couple of days, and I need to get this finished up. What I'm going to do is lay out all my trim pieces. So again, I've got 1x2s that are going along the trim. I'm going to have to route a groove to fit around the dry erase board. And I'm basically got a bunch of wood over here. I got 1x2s and 1x3s laid out here. The 1x2s are going to go all the way around. Just mount the surface here, and then I'm going to have the 1x3s like this. And basically, I'm going to get everything cut to size, get my edges routed out, and then take it outside and get it stained to match the trim of this cabin here. And that's the idea, and hopefully that stain will dry and we can get this all done before the rain comes in, and then while that's dry, we'll finish up these words and the main things we got to do here. Okay, got the first part of the trim, the 1x2s cut to size, if you will. And so what I'm going to do, this part of the board, we're just going to go ahead and paint this the same color as this over here. This is a smooth texture because we didn't put any of the magnetic primer here. But I use these tiles here for spacers because I made these rods, right? Which are these colored rods, which is metal, right? And so the letters will stick to them. And my thinking is each player gets their own color rod. We're gonna, that hole there that you see that's white, that's gonna have paracord going through with a little loop on it. And basically they'll be able to hang them on these hooks face down. So they're up, you know, because they're up on vacation at the cabin. Hey, they're playing a game, they want to go out to eat. And each person's got their own rod, all their letters on it, and they can just hang them right there, spaced out. That's kind of the idea. We're gonna figure out what I gotta do on the routed edges here underneath because there's a lip there and I gotta take care of, because this is sticking up higher than this since I was glued down there. So I'm gonna just route a groove so this will sit down flush into that, and then we'll go ahead and I think everything's good to size, and then we'll go ahead and start cutting the outside trim, which will be the 1x3, which is gonna sit like this against it. So that's the plan. And also for mounting this thing, it's gonna mount on this wall here, but what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna get all this stuff stained, you know, sand, just clean up some of these edges, sanded and stained, get all the wood ready, and then I'm actually gonna hang this board. Again, this is 3/4 inch, okay, so it's heavy. We're gonna hang that on the wall, and I'm gonna put some heavy duty screws all through here, just on this, and then we'll attach the trim after the fact, so it's gonna cover up all the screw holes. And we're gonna go all the way around the board and even behind this piece as well to give a lot of screws in there to hang on that wall. Yeah, so basically I'm routing the grooves where they need to be before we start the standing. And I'm not condoning this, recommending this, but I don't have a portable router table, so I've kind of improvised a portable router table. Not condoning this method, it's what I'm doing right now to get this working. Just getting a coat of stain on these, all the trim boards here. Have it. All right, so we're got all this stuff stenciled out now. We're putting on the Scrabble board. You know, it says Scrabble here with tiles on it. So we went ahead and cut some extra tiles for that. And I've actually pre-drilled some holes in the wood here because I'm gonna glue these and I'm gonna screw them from below. So I've got some countersink holes coming from above. So I've got screws long enough to go through the 3/4 inch sheet of plywood and just gonna come into this into these letters. Gonna glue and screw these into place, and just get a little bit of glue on there. I'm not going all the way out to the edges because I don't want to deal with a mess to clean up. Since I'm going to have the screws, I'm okay doing that. And I've already got this board set just as a guide where these letters are going, and I'm just setting these in place. And I'm going to let these letters dry up overnight, and then I'll put the screws in the morning. Then we're going to take care of stenciling and the letter distribution, which will be below the word Scrabble there. Again, there's a big stencil that was printed out on the Cricut machine on some kind of like stencil special paper thingy stuff, and I can put some links down below if you're interested in stuff, but I really don't know much about it. So I'm gonna get the stencil in place for the letter distribution, and it's kind of tedious here. All right, work it down. There we go. All right, not too bad. So I know I'm going backwards here, but these letters are being glued here, and boom. Okay, y'all, I am super pleased with how this is coming out so far. A lot of stenciling going on there. My wife's finishing up the letter distribution, and we plan to stamp this like she did with a star. But, you know, with that magnetic primer we use, it's not a real super flat, smooth surface. and I was kind of worried about sanding it. I talked to Rust-Oleum about that, and they kind of advised not to, but maybe very lightly, but I just felt like I wouldn't be able to sand it smooth. And so this sticker paper stuff, whatever it is, you know, it just wasn't working out so well. So that's why she's using Sharpie to go ahead and fill out all these stencils. But you can see what she's done, my daughter's done with the rest of the stuff. It looks good. So I can't wait to get it hung up and the trim on and everything else. Oh yeah. Would you look at that? Would you look at that? Beautiful, beautiful. All right, looking good, y'all. It's gonna work, it's gonna work. I got all supporting ones into the studs, and I'm just going around the edges with some shorter screws. I did 3-inch screws going into the studs all the way across, and now I'm just countersinking some holes here for some 2-inch screws. These screws are just going to tap into the tongue and groove here, and then all this stuff's going to come from the trim, but this is really just more to help keep these edges to the wall a little bit. I have to, that's what I ought to be doing, so it's not rotating. You're putting 2 in. Ready? All right, so now just putting on the side trim. That's been all stained, and we're gonna just go all the way around. It'll cover the edges that were on the sides from the backboard, and just nailing this in place. And that's what we're doing here. So this is the crossbar going across here. I had to countersink some holes for these doorknob pulls or whatever they are to go on there. So I'm just getting these threaded on. And again, this is going to be the hanging point for the metal rods we have that the players can then put their tiles on. So you'll see what we're talking about as we get going forward here. But we're going to get these on, and then we're going to get that mounted on the board over there. And then we're going to be like, booyah. Booyah, baby, this is done. It took a long time to get this stuff knocked out, and we had some struggles with these magnets and had to buy a whole boatload more magnets to get it all to work. But we went through the letter distribution down here, made sure we had the exact count. I've got some extras in the closet in case my cleaners have to replace some. All the letters stick, the magnets stick. It's great. Got everything we need. Everything's finished. Got our signage up here, scoreboard. Got a dry erase marker. Got all the hangers set up here. Trims on it, the whole deal. Kit and caboodle is done. I hope it's going to be worth it, but I can tell you, everybody that's come to the cabin while I've been working this, we're like, wow, that is so cool. And I had a dude here yesterday. He was working on some stuff, and he's like, oh my goodness, I love Scrabble, and I'm really good at it, and I ended up like number 3 in a 70-man competition. So he was real impressed with it, was taking pictures. So I hope our guests really love this Scrabble board. It was really cool. It was a lot of time, a lot of work, a lot of money went into this. But I want to thank Jen for having that blog post that kind of tipped us all off, and it was a whole family job to get this thing done. So thanks to them as well. But I hope you guys like the videos here. Hit that like and subscribe.